Hey guys, welcome to Brian's Man Cave. So, about a week ago, I did a video called Being a Retro Gamer versus Being a Modern Gamer. And I talked about the downsides to being a retro gamer versus being a modern gamer. Now, the reason why I do it that way is because I find myself to be more of a retro gamer. And it's not to say that I would never play a modern game or that I completely avoid them. It's just that I find that I'm drawn more towards the retro side. And so in my first video, I kind of ran over some of those reasons and, kind of the downsides of being a retro gamer, like the aftermarket and all that stuff, the costs, and never being able to play newer games. Well, not being never, but, typically not playing the newer stuff. So I thought today I might as well do the upsides of being a retro gamer. Because I figure, and from that first video, I did get quite a few comments that were really interesting, and I jotted some of the ideas down as well that they were throwing out there, because it does make sense. Like there is actually good reasons to stick with the old stuff. I mean I know in most cases you should just continue to grow with what's out there. I don't want to sit here and bash modern gaming because that's not what this is all about. And it's more of a preference for me, and I'm sure there's a lot of other players out there who are more into the old style games than they are into the new style games. So to start off with, I just want to start with one of the main reasons, and that is being a retro gamer. And like I said, this is the upside to being a retro gamer. Is I get to catch up on all the old games that I never got to play. Now, what that really means is when I was a kid, or even when I was a teenager and Nintendo came out, there was a lot of games. I mean, Nintendo has lots of games, and so does Atari, so did Sega, Genesis, and all the systems that came out. There was lots of games, and you would always see these games, like the advertisements, you'd see the commercials. Maybe your friend would have one, or you would rent it, which was very popular, and you would play it for a little bit, but then, you had to give it back. And it was like one of those games you always wanted, but maybe you just never got around to playing it, or buying it, or owning it. So now's a chance to actually go back and find these games, and perhaps it's one that you have. Like maybe you bought it, played it once or twice, put it away, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle of all the new games you bought. And so being a retro gamer really gives you that chance to now dig out those classic games that you really wanted to focus on and now give them a shot. I mean, I'm right now buying a lot of, Atari games that I never really played when I was a kid because I didn't have an Atari, mainly until I was, late teens, I think, when I got my Atari, or, early teens or whatever. And so there was a lot of games I missed out on. So now I'm able to buy them and actually play them. And same with Nintendo. I'm starting to realize there was a lot of Nintendo titles. I don't know how, but I just never got around to playing them. And I think it was really because when you go to during those days anyways, and I'm talking about the NES, you would go to like the rental store, and just like with movies, you'd see a whole wall of video games. And there was no internet to sit there and source all this out and be like, is this game crap or whatever. So you'd kind of go by the titles, you'd kind of go by the boxes. You'd pick out the one you thought looked cool, you'd take it home. Or maybe it was one you heard from a friend at school who said, this game's awesome, go play it, or go try it out, or whatever. And so, you'd go and play these games, but oftentimes there was a lot you would overlook. And so, now there's a chance, like, to actually go into these forums and find out about all these games you've just never heard of. Like, there's just so many games that I've never heard of. Even today, I'm like discovering new games. And actually, when I was doing one of my comparisons, or a couple of my comparison videos, or sorry, not the comparison, similar games videos, I was starting to learn of Sega Master System games that existed that I never heard of. So that's a really good chance to go back and find these hidden gems, or these games that you just always wanted to play. Going on to the next thought of what like the upsides to retro gaming. The games themselves are a lot more simple. And what I mean by that is, I find today the games look very, very, like, they almost look like movies. You got these controllers with buttons all over. It's kind of intimidating to someone who's not used to that style. And I remember actually, oh geez, going back, not too far back, probably about 5-6 years ago, I remember going over to someone's house and they had an Xbox 360, I think it was, and I looked at the controller and I was just like, what do I do? And I was trying to play one of those, I don't know, Call of Duty style games or something. And I was completely lost. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. And it was kind of intimidating because this little kid was sitting beside me and he was just like going all over the place. And I was just like, back in my day, we had one button. So, and I know that's no excuse because, we've adapted to the two buttons, and then the PlayStation had a few more buttons, but I mean, they weren't overly complex games. It didn't really get into the complex until, I would say, like late into the PlayStation times. You started getting into and that's when I started to lose interest in a lot of the newer games. Was the three-dimensional camera angles all over the place. To me, it just didn't feel like a video game. But yeah, I mean, the games that we have today are in the past are a lot more simpler. Like even this one, Legend of Zelda. I mean, it's a 2D, even though it's kind of got that three-dimensional feel to it, but it's still 2D. It's kind of easy to figure out. And it was, Super Nintendo had just enough buttons, just the right amount of buttons for me to figure out what I was doing, So I would say that the simplicity, and I actually kind of like the graphics too. I mean, I know everything was always about trying to get better graphics. That was, a big thing, especially through the 8-bit era, where everything had to be 8-bit and 16-bit, and everything was about bits, and it was all about the graphics. Heck, even the Atari and the Intellivision fought over the better graphics thing. But now it just got to the point where graphics almost have to look real, like real. And I kind of miss that. I like the cartoonish, old-style looking graphics. Doesn't necessarily have to go back to the blocky graphic days, but I mean, even just Nintendo graphics, or to me, I thought were graphics enough for what a video game should be. And, the actual gameplay itself. I hear oftentimes with some of these newer games, in fact, I'm hearing a lot of talk about one of the Nintendo Switch games being, it doesn't work, and it's a terrible game, and it's all about the graphics, and it's all about the look and feel, and the theme, and all that stuff. Whereas in the past, it was more or less the game came first. Having a really great, fun game. Games like The Legend of Zelda. There's a lot of people still love that game today. And I think it was one of the last ones that was actually really good. I mean, I tried some of the newer ones, but I mean, this one I think is one of the best ones. And, that's just an example of what I'm saying, the simplicity of the game. It doesn't have to be too simple, the Pong simple kind of thing. But, I mean, just the idea that you could plug the game in and just kind of start playing. And you don't need to be reading text all the time to tell you what to do. Because that started to get annoying as well. I mean, I started to notice that with some of the newer games. Almost everywhere you go in the game, it had to have something pop up and tell you what to do. Otherwise, you would never figure it out. You'd just be like, I don't know where I am, I don't know what I'm doing. So you kind of need those things popping up. Moving on to my next one, nostalgia. It's kind of the opposite of what I said with the first video about the problem with modern games, with retro gaming, is you don't get to experience brand new stuff that come out because you're really not into it anymore. But you can kind of go backwards and say getting into these games brings back that nostalgia feeling. Whenever I look at an Intellivision cartridge, it just takes me back to the days of when this was video games. Even for the controllers, to just look at this, a classic nostalgic controller, to be able to play it, it's just so reminiscent about, going back to it in the simpler days, the 80s, 90s, when video games were a lot more simple. And they just, I don't know, you just attach memories to these things. And I think even with video games, I think everybody, even today, and I'm sure the kids of today who are playing the new games of today are attaching memories too. And somewhere down the line, if those games still work, they'll have their memories attached. So there's always that nostalgia feeling. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of people play retro, is Because, you know, you can sit there and say, well, the games suck, or there's better games or newer games, and they're always going to be better. But they're missing that little bit of nostalgia to it. Kind of like with a movie. You could reboot and remake a movie, but it's never going to be as good as the original. So, you know. And the last point I need to throw out there, because this one kind of popped up, and it was one that I kind of didn't think about at first, because, again, I'm not really into it. And that's the paying of a lot of money to continue to play a game, or maybe not to just continue it, but to get anywhere in it. So from what I understand, a lot of these modern games, you get kind of like the shell of the game, and then you got to keep paying money to advance your character or get the better weapons or just get anywhere in the game. You gotta sign up to an account, you gotta log into the internet, you gotta download stuff, and to me that just seems very taxing. I mean, that just seems like it's just that extra time I don't want to spend waiting, and especially money. I don't want to keep spending money. So I'm coming from a time where, you know, when you bought a game, you bought the game. So when I bought this game, I bought this game. I just play it. I play it today. No downloads, no patches, no nothing. I don't have to keep funneling money into some you know, account somewhere to continue to play it. And I understand there's a big difference here. I mean, these games were not meant to be like that. They were very simple, you know, get to the point. Some of them you just play it, you complete it, or they just continue to loop. I understand that the gaming has changed nowadays, and that's what they want. Now, you're going online, you're trying to interact with people online, and everything is being done online. So, I mean, obviously there's a shift here, but I really like the fact that I could buy a game. Like, this copy, again, I'm showing this one again, this copy of Legend of Zelda will always be The Legend of Zelda. Every time I pop it into my Super Nintendo, it'll always be the same game. I'll never have to do any kind of patchwork to it, downloads to it, nothing. It'll always be the same game. And that's fine with me. That's what I want the game for. I don't want to know that I'm going to have to download and wait for patches. And I actually heard about that watching other videos on YouTube where games are being released, say, for the Nintendo Switch, that the day of release you need to download a patch or else the game doesn't work. So, you know, you spent, what, $60 on a game that you go home and you realize you have to, like, plug this in, connect to the internet, download something onto your hard drive just to get this game to work. So to me that would be really frustrating. And so I don't have to deal with that being a retro gamer. And I'm happy with that. And I guess part of this too is the load time. Now, I can't really complain too much about load time because I also grew up with the Commodore 64. And so I had the best of both worlds. So I had the Commodore 64 and I had the cartridge. But the Commodore 64, I had disk drive and discs that had to load. Some games took longer than others, but we were used to it. And it was a payoff because you got this awesome game out of it. It would really suck if you spent all that time download or loading a game and the game stunk. But usually you would get to know the games that you had, and it was worth it. So that's what I would have to say about that. Anyways, yeah, so this rounds up the two-parter series I wanted to talk about. Be interested to hear your comments. I know there's a bunch of great comments on my other video, so I'd like to know what you think about it and what I've said, and if any of this resonates with you, and if you kind of feel the same way. And again, I'm not saying that I hate modern gaming and that I would never do it. It's just that I lean much more towards the retro game, and that's where I want to be. That's what I like doing, that's what I like playing, and those are the videos I like to do. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you subscribe to my channel. Talk to you later.